Welcome to HSDF the Podcast, a collection of policy discussions on government technology and homeland security brought to you by the Homeland Security and Defense Forum. The federal procurement ecosystem stands at a crossroads of transformation with sweeping changes to regulations, business processes, and technology integration reshaping how government and industry work together. This engaging conversation between experienced acquisition leaders dives deep into what these changes mean for both sectors and how to prepare for the road ahead. Featuring Soraya Correa, former DHS Chief Procurement Officer, Nina Ferraro, former DHS Deputy Chief Procurement Officer. This discussion took place June 26, 2025 at HSDF Symposium, Defending the Frontline.
And, that is one of the things that when people ask what keeps you up at night, when you think about these things, I do think about the workforce. How do we prepare them for what's coming? Yes, they're there living it, but industry, by the way, has the same challenge. Your workforce has to prepare for what's coming and how they're going to work with the government, contracting professionals as you're trying to get, your procurements done and your contracts renewed, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the workforce before we close out. Talk to me a little bit about how do we prepare the workforce out there? People love to use the word train. I'm so sick of that word now. How do we educate them and enable them to do the job? And we talk about empowerment, and that's a strong word. How do we do that?
Very hard. I agree with you. Your comment about training. Training is wonderful. And I think, between DAU and FAI and individual agencies, there's been a lot of forward movement in changing the model of training, whether that happened through the pandemic and how we were delivering it. But I think what's going to be key now is more of the experiential learning, especially as we're rolling out, what's changing. And we're encouraging people to, embrace the opportunity to fail. No,
say it, right?
Fail forward, right? Fail forward,
Yeah.
Which is what we always said in the pill, like the smart risk taking, right? And having that infrastructure around them, not just with experiential learning. I'm not saying do away with classroom training and things like that. There's a place for so much of this. Right. But I do think the experiential piece of it and the co-learning between, this is where it really is incumbent upon industry and government to be coming at this together, learning together, for industry to be giving its ideas and solutions. So yes, the workforce has a lot on their plate, but they are up to the task. And, you want to just boil the ocean. Sometimes I get so excited thinking about what's happening and I'm thinking, oh, we should do this and we need to do that. And again, I'm saying we, because I still think I work for the government. I don't, but people are excited about the realm of the possible and you want to get after it quickly. So, we talked about technology before. We have to be careful because we are overhauling regulations, right? We are revisioning business processes. And we're talking about technology. And we know that there is a logical, I'll say, order. Right. Agile, obviously, I'm not talking about this and that, but we've got to be careful that as we develop and use the technology, that it is done, in tandem with what is happening with the changes to the regulations and the business process revisioning. So that is a tall task.
It is.
And the workforce, needs to be ready for that, as does industry. So again, I think being in there, testing it, living it, giving the feedback, to me, that's how most of the learning is going to be happening throughout this process versus waiting for everything to be put in place and then some training module to come out to do that. But they need a lot of support, not just from the leadership that we talked about yesterday, the training, they really do need an environment, a culture. That's where the leadership really comes in, that is going to stand behind their ability to embrace what's changing and what's happening. So making sure that, the leaders, the supervisors are ready to help them embrace, the testing before the production, if you will.
Exactly.
That's really what I think is important here.
So we're about to wrap up. So I want to tag off with something you said. It's not just the workforce, it's their leaders. We also have to bring them into the equation, help them understand that they are empowered to make decisions, because sometimes we do encounter leaders that do not seem to be, that don't seem to know that they're empowered to make decisions. but they also have to know how to provide the right level of support to their people, how to have their backs. Because if you don't have their backs, you're going to fall back into the patterns of the past where you're managing by fear, you're doing the work by fear. The last thing that I do want to talk about is a little bit, I think it's important now more than ever for government and industry to focus on transparency.
Agreed.
We have to be a little bit more transparent about our data so that people understand who we are, what we do, and how we do it. I think that's extremely important because I think some of the challenges that we're seeing come from people not really understanding what the role of government is and the role of industry when they're working with government. So I think that's extremely important. Nina, it's always a pleasure to see you. You know how I feel about you. You were my deputy for quite some time, and if you could put up with me as your deputy.
I used to stand behind her as she was writing emails saying, don't write that.
Don't say that.
Cross
Take
that
the
out.
exclamation point out.
Cross
Don't
it
use
out.
red.
Don't put 10 exclamation points next to that.
That is a true statement.
She put it in red font, bold. No.
She would say, Soraya, you're screaming in an email. I'm like, no. Being a fan. So I do want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions. If you guys would like to ask a question or two.
Is it on? Yeah. Beth Wade, Deepwater Point. Maybe this is outside the scope of this session, but I'd really like to get your opinion on what's going on with GSA, the consolidation, the OEMs negotiating, putting the resellers as subs. I mean, it's not all goodness and light, all this change, I don't think. And I'd really like to hear what you think.
So I have not seen the ultimate game plan, right? GSA is supposed to come up with an ultimate plan. I believe that GSA plays an important role in the buying function. And I do think that they could do a lot of really good things with the common buys to support the agencies. GSA is like any other agency staffed with individuals who have to work within the confines of regulations and blah, 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 blah. So I'm not sure that they can do it any better, but what they can do is help us do it better as a collection. So I'm not going to comment on the negotiating with the OEMs because I understand the impact it has on the resellers, but I also look at the impact it has on the government. I mean, sometimes we were getting really jacked up on the prices, and that's just the reality. And there was no consistency in the pricing. And then, of course, our friends on the Hill would then criticize the agency. So I think there's some goodness there, and they got to figure out how they make that work for the resellers, because I don't think you put the resellers out of business. We're constantly trying to grow our industrial base. That's what we talk about all the time in all fields, right? And so we need this industrial base. We need industry supporting us. I think the OEMs are going to have to work with the resellers and figure out how they make that relationship work and make it good for GSA to do these things.
Yeah, I'll just add, when you talk about consolidation, we've been trying in government for some time to, GSA had their vehicles and all of the agencies were, either using some of those vehicles or the best in class. But I do think there was still personally, I think there was still too much redundancy. And I think, the spirit of what they're trying to do, I think is good, right? But it gets back to what we've been saying all along. Like, what are the unintended consequences, right? What's going to come out of this? And I think as they overhaul FAR Part 8, I think we all need to be paying close attention to what that's going to look like. So there's so many moving parts and pieces. I just believe that there was opportunity for improvement there. But I think we need to pay close attention to what the unintended consequences might be.
Yeah, and give them a chance. Give them a chance. Let's see what the game plan comes out to be. Because they have tall order. Consolidating all those contracts. Good luck with that. I'm so glad I'm not in them. No, just kidding. Good to see you. This is like old home week. I'm running all my buds. I see you, Kathy, over there. See you.
Tiffany Bailey. Good to see you both.
Working? I know, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
He's the next GSA. He'll be the next GSA administrator. Watch.
We can try to repeat it if you want. Just
talked about the overhaul with regulation and talked about the need for government to be more transparent. Where do you see the next iteration for the you haven't heard a lot of talk about that, but it's been in place for a while. So where is that?
So just so everybody hear her, she's asking, we talked about transparency. She wants to know what our opinions are about the evolution of the Procurement Innovation Lab. Want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. So, I recently had an interview with the Virtual Acquisition Office, and I was asked about this. And so Soraya, who, created the pill, and I helped her, expand it. And I am still thrilled with what that team has done and how it was expanded across government, how agency after agency stood up their own version of the Procurement Innovation Lab. But with this, what I think is happening with the FAR overhaul is we're trying to embed in the, overhauled regulations more ability to innovate, right? Naturally, like Soraya talked earlier about, we used to innovate in spite of the regulations, right? What my hope is for the overhaul of the FAR is that it's not going to be in spite of anymore, but hopefully built into the regulatory process, that discretion, that ability to make smart decisions and manage risk is going to be built into that rather than us trying to find the loopholes, which was a lot of what I saw before. We always said we thought eventually the Procurement Innovation Lab should work itself out of a job. We always said that from the beginning. Yep. Not to hurt the people's feelings who were involved in it, because we are the biggest champions, right? Yeah, we always thought that. And that is ultimately what I think needs to happen, because we want it to be part of the culture. You want it to be part of just how we do business every day. And that is, again, a tall order. Right. Shifting the mindset and the culture of the workforce it's not easy, but that's, for me, what, the evolution of innovation would be.
Yeah, so I always like to lay out really super lofty goals, as Nina company used to say, come on, Soraya, bring it back a bit. But in the ideal world, every contracting officer, every contract specialist out there would be an innovation advocate. They would be looking at the procurements that are put before them, the questions that they are asked by their customers, the problems that come up during contract administration, and being innovative and creative about solving that problem. That's the ideal. And that's where I was trying to go culturally. I know you're never going to get to 100%. Everybody's not going to do it. But if we could get the majority of the folks to really think innovatively, to say, what is the problem that we need to solve and how can we solve it? How can we bring the right folks together to solve this problem? How do we partner with our industry partners to get this job done? That's really what should happen. And so, to answer your question, in my ideal world, the Procurement Innovation Lab should no longer be needed if we do this right. Do I think it's going to go away? No, I think there's always going to be a home there for it, because in our government, we can't get away from checks and balances. And so somebody's still going to be piling stuff on. But hopefully now, it'll take another 40 years and then I won't be around and I won't care, right? But it's been 40 years and look at all that's been added on. And I often talked about the amount of work and the responsibility that we were putting in the hands of a contracting officer. A CO was no longer just writing a contract. They had to be a logistics specialist, an engineer, an environmentalist, because they had to follow all these rules. They had to understand, they had to read these rules and understand them because they were applying them in the contract. So let's get back to some basics and let's build compliance into the process, because as I always said, our role was to deliver on the mission. Our role was to enable the mission. And when you stop talking about the mission, you're failing. And I think the role of government is to deliver on the mission. So those are my thoughts.
I think it's going to be interesting too, and I know we're on time, as we talk about Part 33 of the FAR and bid protests, as people take more risks, as these guidelines are more flexible, it's going to be very interesting to see how they are applied, what that increased risk-taking, managed risk-taking is going to look like in the realm of not just compliance, but are we doing it correctly? Are we holding ourselves accountable to getting the best outcomes, not getting mired in step-by-step process, but getting to yes and getting to the right outcome along with industry. Again, I think the big challenge for you guys is we're doing all of this, but you need to come along, not just in understand, like, what are you doing within industry, within your own organizations to be ready for this co-collaboration, right? So I would love to talk to every one of you because I would love to know what's kind of happening within inside of your organizations in terms of, becoming more agile yourselves in your own processes, right? And how are you looking at the potential changes in Part 33 and some of the other, areas that we've talked about? I'm very interested in your perspectives.
So with that, I think they're giving us the hook. So we're going to be around for a little bit, but thank you all for your kind attention, for sticking around with us. And please, again, join me in congratulating Nina on a great career.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like to give Soraya, Nina, and all of our tremendous program speakers another big round of applause. We are so grateful that they were able to share some of their insights and expertise today, especially in this time of unprecedented change. And I do once again want to thank our event partners, Dell Technologies and Oracle Cloud. And we also want to thank the incredible team here at the Gallup Building for their support and our awesome mic runner, Sam. So we hope you'll stay for our reception, which is going to begin right through those doors. But just really quickly, I did want to provide some updates on other amazing upcoming HSDF events. We have our Cybersecurity Symposium taking place July 23rd. We've got an awesome program planned, really focusing on the changing cyber landscape to include critical infrastructure, threats from nation states, as well as how agencies are leveraging AI and automation for cyber outcomes. And then later this year, we'll have our Tech Innovation and Government Symposium on November 5th. We will be back here at the Gallup Building. And our 8th annual Border Security Symposium is going to be on December 12th. We'll be over at the Reagan Building this year. So registration is open for all of these events. You can find those links on our website. And as a reminder, we are looking for sponsors. So if your company is interested in helping shape these programs or provide some industry thought leadership, please reach out to us directly. And thanks again for joining us today. I will see you at the reception.
Thank you for tuning in to HSDF the Podcast. Follow HSDF the Podcast and never miss the latest insider talk on government technology, innovation, and security. Visit the HSDF YouTube channel to view hours of insightful policy discussion. For more information about the Homeland Security and Defense Forum, HSDF, visit hsdf.org.